am LaMarsha Lewis. Let's talk. Today is Monday, January the 18th, 2021. And today's commentary, I wanted to do a little reflection in regards to The View, the television show that comes on ABC with 5 co-hosts, Whoopi Goldberg being the moderator, Joe Behart, Sunny Hostin, Meghan McCain, Sarah Haynes, and also Anna Navarro, who is normally the Friday co-host. Today's View show was in regards to today being the national observance of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As we know, Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday is actually January the 15th, which was this past Friday. But back in 1983, the late President Ronald Reagan signed that the third Monday in January will be a federal holiday where we will give recognition to the late civil rights Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on the third Monday in January. It actually took effect 3 years later, January the 20th, 1986. And today, The View gave their tributes to the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They also talked about the breach, the insurrection that took place at our nation's capital, and Sunny Hostin gave her insights. Meghan McCain gave her insights, and I want to play the clips in which Meghan McCain spoke and also Sunny Hostin. And I also want to play a clip to the question where Meghan McCain spoke and asked the question to the representative of the state of Missouri, Cori Bush, because they really just spoke to my heart. I was surprised to hear Meghan McCain on air to publicly say how she wanted to give acknowledgement, and to Sunny Hostin, the heart conversation that they have on air as well as off air, and to hear Meghan McCain, who we often hear and noted for John McCain's daughter. It really just paid. I was like, wow, Meghan McCain is saying that she's trying to basically do better. She talked about what she experienced in 2020. Again, let's just go ahead and listen to the clip, and then we will get back into my commentary after listening to the clips. And this is clips from The View. So I want to make that know that these clips that I'm playing is from today's episode of January the 18th, 2021, The View.
Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday.
This is a very sacred day for Americans, and I prefer to be hopeful on this day because Dr. King was nothing if not an incredibly hopeful and optimistic man who at his core believed in love and light and the blessings of democracy. If there's anything I have learned personally in the past year in 2020, it's just how deep and intense the original sin of slavery in America is. And I think for a lot of people, myself included, this summer with the Black Lives Matter movement and all of the murders of unarmed black men has been, I wouldn't say a wake-up call, because obviously we are all well aware that racism still exists in the country. But I think for me, the pain, we haven't done the healing and the work since Dr. King's assassination that we really should have and need to continue doing. Racism exists all over the country in all different factions. It's not just, rednecks in the deep south, if you will. We had a racial scandal on this very show at this very network earlier in the summer by someone that I don't think anyone would think had racial tendencies. And I just want to say that on a very personal level, I have really been deeply grateful for the conversations we have had on this show, on air and off air. I particularly want to thank my co-host, Sunny, who has given me so much grace and patience and had really hard conversations about a lot of things that have really helped me grow and understand things that I don't think I would have necessarily understood. So I think there is room for growth and communication, and I think we have to keep talking to one another and keep giving us as Americans grace and love and solidarity, because I don't know one person that doesn't want us to heal and move forward. And as Condoleezza Rice said, one of my personal icons and heroes, all of us have to take a hard look at what we are contributing to racism in this country. And I believe that I am making my best attempt at doing that. And I implore every other conservative and Republican to do that as well, because there isn't this much pain and anguish and protesting if there isn't real deep-rooted pain that hasn't gone unaccounted for.
Today is Martin.
And again, that was Meghan McCain. Here is Sunny Hostin responding, giving her take about what's presently going on in our world, and also again recognition of Martin Luther King. So let's listen to what Sunny Hostin had to say. Again, this is from ABC The View, today's show, January the 18th, 2021.
Well, I think we have a lot to learn from Dr. King's legacy, but I also want to mention, I thank Meghan for what she said, because we have had those really difficult conversations about race, and those are conversations that people just aren't open, unfortunately, to having, and those are the conversations that lead to healing. Remember, I remember the time when someone like Jamel Hill, who came forward and called Donald Trump a racist and lost her job because of that, received death threats because of that. I remember Colin Kaepernick getting canceled because he stood up for people and stood up for the police brutality that black men were experiencing. And remember that Dr. King was called an enemy of the state, was trailed by the FBI, was called a troublemaker, because he was talking about race, talking about the evils, the three evils, which in 1967 for him were racism, poverty, and the war in Vietnam. And we still are suffering from those three evils, maybe in a different way, because we still are suffering from the scourge of racism and police brutality. We're suffering from economic disparity and poverty, and we're certainly suffering from this evil pandemic. And Dr. King in 1967 again said, there's been some progress, but we must not allow this progress to cause us to engage in a superficial, dangerous optimism. And I think that is what happened to us. I think we saw that, we're going to have the first female vice president who is African American and Southeast Asian. And we saw such promise with Georgia, turning blue. We saw such promise. And then on January 6th, we see that white supremacy is very much so alive and well. We saw that. We saw an insurrection in our nation's capital. We saw that there are people, just like Dr. King said, that they'd much rather have white supremacy rather than this multiracial democracy that he wished for. So I would say that in order for us to really live out his legacy, his dream, is that we must demand truth before unity. And I saw today, unbelievably, in my view, Ted Cruz, Kayleigh McEnany, Ronna McDaniel, Melania Trump, quoting Dr. King, tweeting Dr. King. Those were the same people that were like Melania Trump with this birther lie, the Ted Cruz with challenging, the Electoral College, Kayleigh McEnany, just over and over again with her propaganda. How dare they try to quote Dr. King on the celebration of his birthday when they enabled a racist president causing this insurrection and attack on our democracy. So while we have some progress, we just have such a long way to go, Whoopi, such a long way to go. Well, I think we have a lot to learn from...
And I'm going to play one more clip, and this is the clip with Meghan McCain and Congresswoman Cori Bush, where Meghan McCain asked her a question. Let's listen.
Congresswoman, on today's most sacred Martin Luther King Day, a lot of us are sitting here feeling hopeless. what do you think we can do going forward to try and bridge divides in this country and work together collectively as Americans? Because I think a lot of people are just feeling, especially after the terror attack, like we are a country completely divided with nothing in common anymore.
So I am going to say, don't feel hopeless. Let's start with that. Don't feel hopeless, because that's how we get through. You gotta have hope. That hope is on the inside of you. Now remember this, we don't go by what happens externally. That shouldn't shape what's happening on the inside of us. We have to stand strong no matter what the adversity, no matter what it looks like. Our faith has to be the core of everything that we do, and our faith in action is how we make change. And so when I think about when I was sleeping in the car with my two babies and my partner, and we were moving that car around St. Louis because we didn't have a home, I didn't lose hope. I was hurt, I was tired, I was humiliated, I was burdened, I was oppressed, but I didn't lose hope. Every single time I got my paycheck and I had $20 left over, and I still had to take care of my kids and pay daycare and all of this, and I had $20 left over, I didn't lose hope. I worked on me. And so, no, don't lose hope right now. Dr. King's legacy was not about sitting back and allowing other people to do the work. His legacy was not about letting someone else dictate how we should feel. His legacy was about making sure that a dignity and a quality of life for each and every person was available. I am an instrument of peace. That's what you should be saying. I am an instrument of peace. I bring everything that I have, every gift, every talent, every skill, bring that to the forefront and put that to this movement. And so what we can all do is we can do our part to make this an anti-racist society. And that means not just talking to, not just saying I have a black friend or I help out, I help my Palestinian friends and I do. No. We're talking about talking to your friends and then your block, talking to the people in your religious affiliation or your groups, whatever you're doing, talking to them. You're at your job, at the company you own, making the effort, putting some real intention behind making this an anti-racist country.
Congresswoman.
Again, I want to do this commentary today because when I heard Meghan McCain said that she and Sunny have had some real hard conversation, and what really spoke to me when she said off air, like behind the scene, the two of them are actually doing real hard, true conversation about racism. And then when Sunny came on and said she wanted to thank Meghan, I thought that was very admirable of Sunny to thank Meghan, and to Meghan McCain, I want to say thank you for sharing that with millions of people, because as we know, The View is seen around the world, and we see so much that goes on. Lots of time it seems as though the fighting and the disagreement, but when you can have behind the scene conversation, especially about what's going on in our world today, as Sunny had noted when she spoke up the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., she said it was 3 things that he spoke about or was concerned about. 1, racism. 2, poverty. And then at that time it was the Vietnam War. And like she said, we still racism in the years 2021. We still have poverty. We still have so many people in the United States that's below poverty. And again, with the current pandemic, in just 2 more months, it will be 1 year where the United States of America have experienced economic hardship. People still without jobs. Vaccine has been brought out, but still, so the number of deaths continuously to increase. Basically, like with over 400,000 of American lives that have died from this COVID-19 and the cause of this pandemic. But at the root is racism. January the 6th, the insurrection that took place at our nation's capital, at the incitement of, as Representative Cori Bush stated when she spoke on the floor when they was doing the vote for the second impeachment of Donald J. Trump, she said the racist the white supremacist racist in chief. That is who he is. She called him out for who and what he is. As Sunny spoke and said how Jamel Hill, when she called him a racist, lost her job, basically got blackballed. Colin Kaepernick, when he took a knee for peaceful protesting against police brutality to black and brown men, blackballed, lost a NFL career. And Donald J. Trump was incitement to that. So when I heard Meghan McCain say she's really trying to understand, have the conversation, and want to do better. And I've often heard so many whites, because I remember when Abby Huntsman was still on The View, she once said, well, let's have conversation. We can have so many conversations. In fact, we have, and we continue to have so many conversations about racism. We know that racism is alive and well. If we be true, do true analysis, true honesty, this country was built upon racism. I know when they first talked about the insurrection that took place, and Meghan McCain had said, well, she just couldn't believe this is not America, this is not American. And as some I've been seeing on various social media platforms, this is America. This is America. America was formed, built upon racism. And we're in the year of 2021, and racism is still at the all-time core of everything. And we have evangelicals like Franklin Graham, Paula White, and all these various people that profess to be Christian that have enabled and embedded, emboldened Donald J. Trump to be the racist that he is, the white supremacist in chief that he is. But 2 more days, he's out. But this is because at the core of it all, racism. Meghan McCain mentioned like back in the summer of 2020 when they experienced racism at their network. If you haven't heard that story, do some research about racism at ABC, and they let go of an executive due to, it was Robin Roberts who works on Good Morning America, and Sunny Hostin was 2 people who was named, that she specifically named. But again, you can do your own research on that. And as we know, last year Sunny Hostin released a book called Sunny Hostin and These Truth, and she shared with us how she experienced racism at the job that took much courage and strength to actually share that information with the public, people all over the world. She did various interviews. She talked about her book and on the show The View, and she did various interviews. As most book, when a book is released, the authors go around to various TV shows and promote their book. She talked about how she experienced it at The View, where she didn't have a dressing room where all of the other co-hosts, her dressing room was on the 2nd floor. Just various things. But she did say they had a conversation with some of the executives, and they said, well, we got to do better. So at least the acknowledgement is there. But what are we truly going to do about the matter? We had a sitting president to incite an insurrection. He told his people to go to our nation's capital. He knew all our congressmen and women, the vice president, the speaker, Madam Nancy Pelosi. They knew everyone in Congress was at our nation's capital to do the job of certifying the electors from the 50 states where we, the American people, have spoke to certify Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. And because, again, Donald J. Trump, being a racist, white supremacist in chief, has been emboldened by all the sitting Congress. Men and women are just like him, are racist and also white supremacists. This country was not built, not founded upon where a person of African American descent or an immigrant is to have a place in the United States. We are supposed to be inferior to whites, Caucasians. We're basically they still want to act as if we're not even actual human beings, only because the skin of we carry is different. The pigmentation in our skin. Black Americans, immigrants that they don't want to come into this country, who's only seeking to have a better life for their families and for themselves. This is America. And when will the racism end? Honestly, I don't believe it will. Dr. Martin Luther King was fighting for it back in his time. He died in 1968. That's over already 52 years. We had the late John Lewis, who marched with Dr. Martin Luther King on the Evans Bridge there in Montgomery, Alabama. In Selma, Alabama. They were beaten. We know how John Lewis was beaten. They were put in jail. But yet and still, they fought so we could have civil rights. Dr. Martin Luther King wanted us to be treated equal. Not to be judged on the color of our skin, but about the content of our character. This is the dream that we must continue to uphold and never let die. I love the conversation that Congresswoman Cori Bush shared with Meghan when Meghan said, we basically, on this Martin Luther King Day, we're basically all are hopeless. Sarah Haynes also spoke to the fact that who we all know, Sarah Haynes always pretty much a bubbly person, but she's talking about seeing hopeless. Dr. Martin Luther King didn't want us to be hopeless. He wanted us to have hope. We know the first African American president, President Barack Obama, his campaign slogan was, "Yes, we can." A vision of hope. A vision of hope. That won him the first Black African American, the presidency in 2008. And God saw grace and gave him 2 terms. And then they put someone like Donald J. Trump in to be the successor of the first African American president. Why? Because again, this country was not founded on where blacks would be in charge, especially a commander-in-chief, have degrees, have education, have prominent jobs, prominent status in our society, and to just simply operate in our society. We were supposed to be inferior. We were supposed to be beneath. We were supposed to be as if, again, we were not even human beings. But because of the grace of God, and know this, people, God is a true and real God. He has no respectable person. He wants us all to come to him and to accept him as our Lord and as our Savior, and to treat one another with love and kindness. For God is love. He said that we are to love our neighbors as ourselves. We are to welcome the children, little children, and we are to be respectful and kind. Treat one another the way we want to be treated. No one should be inferior to the other. No one should be treated as they're a second-class citizen or not even human beings, when we all are, just because this pigmentation in our skin colors is different. That is not of God. And we need to continue, we got to continue to fight. We cannot lose hope, as Congresswoman Bush said. We can't lose hope. We can't let the light dim out. We have to continue to shine the light. We have to continue to be the light. Thankful for people like Colin Kaepernick, who took a knee. He lost his career, but he took a knee for injustice. He wants justice for black and brown people. Police brutality should not be. Just this summer alone, a white police officer sat on the neck of George Floyd and killed the man in open public daylight. He cut off the airway to this man. He put his foot on the neck of a black man on the ground where he lost body fluids. He called out for his mother. Breonna Taylor, her and her boyfriend, in their own apartment, killed by police officers. A black woman. Ahmaud Arbery jogging, minding his own business, and was killed by white men. Racism. That is where we are in America. And Joe Biden has been elected to be the 46th president of the United States. 2 days from now, January the 20th, at 12 o'clock noon, he will be inaugurated and will become our next president, the first black vice president, first woman of color, first woman of Indian descent, will be the nation's first vice president. The reason why all those men and women in Congress are kicking against Joe Biden is because, one, he was the vice president to the first African American president. He built and formed a relationship, a rapport with President Barack Obama. He selected the woman, a black woman, to be his vice president. That's why he's been kicked against. All again because of racism. If he would have selected a white man, a white woman, they would have opened arms with him. Even though, yeah, they're with Trump, but it wouldn't be to the degree where they know there was no rigged election. They know there was no fraud election. They know that the election was free and fair by we, the American people. But because Biden chose Kamala Harris, African American woman, Indian descent, to be his vice president, that's why he's getting all the rebuke against his presidency. Where they went so much, never experienced once the candidate was announced that won a president race, where you had it being said by the sitting president, and then he had enablers, men and women of Congress, to agree or to be the embodiment, his voice to his lie, to his conspiracy, that he won the presidential election, where he did not. They knew this, but they made the choice to go along. Just like those 10, I believe it was, or was it 6, that voted against the electors, again, knowing that it was a lie, but they made the choice. These are John Cato. I'm sorry, those are the ones that voted. Let me find them. You had 10 Republicans that was brave enough to vote to impeach, but then you had sitting senators that made the conscious choice, knowing that it was a lie. Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, Rick Scott of Florida, Roger Marshall of Kansas, John Kennedy of Louisiana, Cindy Hyde Smith of Mississippi, the state in which I live, Josh Hawley of Missouri, Ted Cruz of Texas, and Cynthia Loomis of Wyoming. These sitting senators that even after the insurrection took place at the nation's capital, went in there and still voted against the will of the people. They voted against the American people. They voted against certifying the electors for Joe Biden. Racism. Cindy Hyde Smith, she has said she would sit front row at a public hanging. If that doesn't exemplify racism, tell me what does. A sitting United States senator, never to this day apologized for, said openly at a rally when she was campaigning the first time against Mike Espy in the state of Mississippi, she would sit front row at a public hanging, and she went in there and voted to go against the certification, objected to the certification of Joe Biden. Racism. And you had several representatives, Mike Guest from Mississippi also voted against it. Trent Kelly Mississippi voted against the certification. Just flat out lies. And what's so bad about it? They know it's lies, but yet they did it. Michael Guest and Trent Kelly, two representatives from Mississippi that voted to the ejection of the certification. Racism. And you got Franklin Graham out there, never called Donald Trump out. One, when he paid $130,000 to a porn star because he had committed adultery, cheated on his third wife. And we all know the allegations of other women that's got allegations out there against him. Then the emboldened racism. This is the man that said there were fine people on both sides at the riot that took place in Charlottesville when blacks were just trying to peaceably protest against black people being treated unfairly. A woman can't sleep in her own home without police doing the proper thing, knocking on the door, getting someone to come to the door. No, they just go in and open and fire shots and kill this woman. And the young lady, the time officer that was playing the video games with her nephew, supposedly they were supposed to be doing a welfare check, go to the back of her house and not knock on the door to get her attention, kills the woman. Again, Ahmaud Arbery just jogging and white men killed him. A white police officer put his feet on the neck of a black man that sucks his air off, that he can't breathe, kills him. This is where we are. This is where we are. The President of the United States incites a breach to our nation's capital. He has white supremacist domestic terror storm our nation's capital. This is where we are. Meghan McCain mentioned the lady on the show. I don't know how that would have went if Sunny may have made note, talked about the woman that gave racism against her. And again, like I say, Robin Roberts was another person. But as Cori Bush said, Representative Congresswoman Corbett, don't lose hope. Our faith, she said our faith, and that's especially people of color, African, because we know years and years and years ago when slavery was what most of our ancestors were, slaves, it was their faith. When they was picking cotton, hoeing cotton in the cotton fields in the heat of the day with the sun brewing down, being beaten by their slave master. The slave master sleeping with black women, making black children. President Thomas Jefferson, black children from his slave. Abraham Lincoln owns numerous of previous years president owned slave. But it was the faith. They singing in the cotton fields. They allowed us to go to church. So it was faith. God. That is what has been the foundation of us as black Americans' survival. God Almighty alone. And our faith, our hope, our trust in Him. Because again, this country, these United States of America, where we have 50 states, Washington, D.C., being our nation's capital, and Puerto Rico, was not founded upon us, people of color, black Americans, immigrants, again, just trying to come to these United States for a better life. We are still facing racism. Still to this day facing racism. Colin Kaepernick, again, took a knee, lost his career, all because he was peacefully protesting. You had so many people calling out, well, he's sitting down when the national anthem is being sung. That's against the military. But it was a military man that told him, don't just sit on the bench, but take a knee to show you're protesting peacefully, to show respect. And he respected that, what was told from a military person. But again, you got these conservatives out here. Even Meghan McCain has downed it, Colin Kaepernick, because her family is military. She advocates for anything and anyone, just like the woman, Ashley Bobby, that died in the insurrection, sedition that took place at the nation's capital. Because they are military, Meghan McCain often thinks they should get a pass. We saw a former retired lieutenant man in the chambers in a combat suit. You had off-duty police officers. And before all this is said and done, the more we get truth about what happened January the 6th, 2021, CNN just yesterday, and also it was shown on The View, a video that was posted by a New Yorker reporter of what transpired in the nation's capital, in the chambers, how they stormed our nation's capital, how they were taking pictures, said Ted Cruz should be happy with this, and Josh Hawley. You had people that were former military. You had a gymnast that was a swimmer, had his USA jacket on. That's how he was identified. You had a real estate woman that flew her private plane. It's been said that the sitting Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas' wife bussed people in and was on her social media, Facebook, proudly promoting the breach, the insurrection. And a city congresswoman from Colorado, Lauren Bryant, supposedly gave a live notification of where the Madam Speaker Nancy Pelosi is. These are conservative values. The Republican Party supposed to be about family value, but when it's all said and done, what the Republican Party represent, racism. That's their conservatives. Being racist against anyone of color, any immigrants, anyone that's not a white male or a white woman of the Caucasian race. January the 6th, these domestic terrorists stormed our nation's capital, busted out windows, had a noose hanging, calling to hang Matt Pence, asking where was Nancy Pelosi, ramshacked offices. Someone stole the Madam Nancy Pelosi's lecture and her laptop. And they got to walk out and go home. That'd have been blacks. No way they would have even made it into the nation's capital. They wouldn't gotten beyond the police, because the police would have shot and killed. As we saw, many of them were smiling, taking photographs. I was listening to CNN on Sunday where they are trying to, in my opinion, saying that the police officer that was in the chambers with the men that were one sitting at Madam Speaker's chair left a message to, we're coming for you. Again, men shown taking pictures of the documents that was on these senators' desks. One saying Cruz would be happy with what they got, and another one saying, and Josh Hawley too. He didn't seem like he was fearful. In my opinion, he was in on it. He let them do what they wanted in our nation's chambers. He wasn't fearful. He wasn't calling for backup. He was standing there, again, letting them do as they please. Then say, well, I think you've got enough. You need to leave. This is what was experienced. Racism. Found out again, off-duty police officers was there. The men and women, say attorneys, doctors. Back in the day, they wore sheets. KKK, Ku Klux Klan. Now they have, because of the emboldenment that whites, evangelical, like again, Paula White, Franklin Graham, Republican Congress, House of Representatives, senators, because of what's in their heart, the racism, the hate, they emboldened Donald J. Trump to be the spokesperson of white supremacists. And they backed him. That is where we are. That is why someone with no qualification, known to be a racist, who put out a full-page ad in New York against those 5 black men that was found innocent, have yet to apologize. Many lawsuits about being discriminated against blacks in his business. The one that birthed that President Barack Obama wasn't born in the United States, but he's had 2 wives from different countries. But President Barack Obama was not born in the United States. Racism. Racism. The core of what America stands for. Whether you acknowledge it, that is the truth. That is the fact. Racism is alive and well in these United States of America. And before the insurrection that took place, I had heard Utah Senator Mitt Romney said how many contenders for 2024 was pattering after Trump. What does that mean? They wanted to continue to embolden racism. They want this country now to be nothing but what it was founded upon, racism. Where blacks are treated unfairly, not equal, berated, belittled, counted out, things taken away from us. We being killed every day. Like, again, going back, no way blacks could have stormed the nation's capital and got to go home. And these senators are still, again, 2 days from now, Donald J. Trump leaves the White House when he should have left the White House January the 6th or no later than January the 7th of 2021. He is still sitting as the United States president. Impeached for the 2nd time by the House of Representatives. Is ongoing what will be when the Senate actually takes the trial. But we know he should not be able to have all the benefits that previous presidents have once they have left office, where he would have a pension plan, where he would have a travel allotment to, as it's been stated, to continue to go around this country, in various countries, inciting racism, white supremacists. That should not be where we, the American people, pay for that. But again, this country was founded on racism. And all those citizens who took an oath 3 days before, took an oath with their right hand raised, toted their Bibles, and said that they would defend the United States Constitution against foreign and domestic, against all entities. But our enemy was the sitting current United States 45th President, Donald J. Trump. Racism. Racism emboldened enabled and approved by United States Republican Congress men and women. This is my commentary. January the 18th, 2021. And as the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. told us to always have hope. Hate cannot live. Love always win. Have hope. We've come a long ways, but there is still so much more work to be done. Don't get tired. And if you do, rest for a moment. But you gotta continue the fight. We must keep the dream alive. The sacrifices of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the late Congressman John Lewis, good trouble. When you see something, do something. We have a responsibility. We have an obligation because we too live in these United States of America. We too are Americans, like it or not. We too are Americans, and we have a right to have freedom, to be treated equally, to have the same opportunities as every one of you. We should not be judged on the pigmentation of our skin, but by the content of our character. As we honor the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., please remember that we will forever continue the dream of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Thank you, sir, and everyone else that came before us. Your labor, your work, your heart, dedication, and sacrifice in your lives that you gave for us was not in vain. I am Marsha Lewis. Let's talk.